All right, now that we have a little bit of an understanding of what radians are, let's go ahead and apply that to filling out the unit circle. And we're going to start with the degrees because I think you're more comfortable with that. So for the degrees on the unit circle, I'm just going to put those all on the dotted lines. So we're going to start with 0 degrees. So we start here at 0 degrees. And then we already know that going halfway around the unit circle takes us to 180 degrees. So now if we cut that in half, so if we go to the very top, that's going to be 90 degrees. If we go all the way around the circle, a complete rotation around, that's 360 degrees. And if we go down on the bottom, it's halfway between 180 and 360, and that's going to be 270 degrees. So we start by labeling the ones on the tops and on the sides. Now from there, we can fill out the increments of 30 degrees and 45 degrees. So this is where, you maybe had a unit in geometry on like special triangles. This is where those special triangles are derived from. So this one is going to be 30 degrees. Then I'm going to jump over the next one and it's going to be 60 degrees. So we have every one of these, I'll put these in purple, is an increment of 30 degrees. You can think of this as kind of like a clock. There's going to be 12 hours in a clock. So every time you have 30 degrees, it's like 1 hour in a clock. So you got 30, 60, 90. The next one's just going to add another 30, and it's going to keep adding 30 degrees onto it. So if we take 90 and we add another 30 degrees, we're going to be at 120. And if we add another 30 degrees, we go down here and we're at 150. We already have 180. We can add another 30 degrees and we're at 210. Add 30 more degrees, we're at 240. Then we see 270. We loop around and we're going to be at 300 degrees and 330 degrees. So we filled out most of those except for the ones that are right in the middle. So the ones that are right in the middle, pretty simple. You can just take 90 and cut it in half, and that's going to give you 45 degrees. So we can now take 90 and add 45 degrees, which gives us 135. We can take 180 degrees and add 45 degrees here. That gives us 225. And lastly, we can go over here. 300 and 330, right in between those is 315 degrees. So this is how you fill out the degrees in the unit circle. I'm not super concerned about that. Usually we're pretty solid at those. But what we do struggle with sometimes is radians. So for radians, I'm going to go back to our notes that we had. And we're going to have this rope here. And you can just kind of pretend that this rope has a length of 2 pi. So I'm going to start with, let's use green. This is 0 radians. And all the way to the end is 2 pi radians. So remember how we talked about the radian measurement is just how far it went around the unit circle, and that total length around one time was 2 pi. So let's just go with some of the easy ones. Let's go halfway between. So if we go halfway between, that's going to be pi radians. And that corresponds in this diagram over here. That's pi radians. Now we're going to cut that in half, and that's going to be pi over 2 radians. So we took pi and we cut it in half, and that would correspond to up here. And we can similarly go the other way. Halfway in between 1 pi and 2 pi is 1.5 pi's, and we can write that as a fraction as 3 pi over 2 radians. So these are going to be the 4 that are on the x and y axis of the unit circle. So let's go ahead and put those in here. So we have 0 radians. 1 full rotation was 2 pi radians. It ends up at the exact same spot. Halfway around a circle was pi radians. If we cut it in half, we got pi over 2. And if we go halfway between pi and 2 pi, we had 3 pi over 2. So those are the 4 on the x and y axis. Now let's go ahead and fill out the rest of them. Which one is it? That one. All right. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at all of these blue marks over here. So all of these that are in light blue, every one of those represents a 30-degree increment. So let's take some of what we learned last video. We have 30 degrees. And I want to convert this into radians. So to convert it, we can multiply by pi over 180 degrees. The degrees cancel out. Then we're left with 30 pi over 180. And we can take the 0 and 0, divide by 10, it's gone. So we're at 3 pi over 18, divide the top and bottom by 3, and we get pi over 6. Now this is going to be important for filling this out. We just found that 30 degrees, every time you go 30 degrees, it's equivalent to pi over 6. So every 30-degree increment is a pi over 6. So if I go to that first blue tick mark there, that's going to be pi over 6. If I go to the next blue tick mark, so we started here, now we're going to the next blue tick mark, that's just another 30 degrees. So what that one is you can think of that as 2 pi over 6, but you can reduce 2 pi over 6, divide the top and bottom by 2, and we get pi over 3. So this one up here was pi over 6. This one is pi over 3. Now, this one we already have, so we're going 1, 2, 3. This is 3 pi over 6, but we already reduced that to pi over 2, and we already have that. So now we jump another increment over here, so that next blue tick mark was 4 pi over 6, which reduces down to, if you divide the top and bottom by 2, it becomes 2 pi over 3. So if we count the tick marks again, we're at 1, 2, 3, 4. Now this one we are at 5 pi over 6. And that one can't be reduced, so this becomes 5 pi over 6. And similarly, you can just keep counting. So this is going to be 6 pi over 6, which reduces to just pi. 7 pi over 6, 8 pi over 6, 9 pi over 6, 10 pi over 6, 11 pi over 6, and 12 pi over 6. So let's go ahead and fill this out over here. Every blue tick mark, every 30 degrees, we are going to add another pi over 6. So this was 7 pi over 6. This next one was 8 pi over 6, which reduces to 4 pi over 3. Then we had 9 pi over 6, but we already have that one. Then we're at 10 pi over 6, and that 10 pi over 6 reduces down to 5 pi over 3. And then we have 11 pi over 6. And there's all of our blue tick marks we have accounted for. And now the only ones that we have left are the red ones. Let's see how we deal with the red ones. We know in the degrees world that these red marks here, halfway between in that first quadrant, is 45 degrees. And if I want to convert 45 degrees into radians, we just multiply by pi over 180. And this becomes 45 pi. Sorry, no degree symbol. 45 pi over 180. And you can divide the top and bottom by 45, and it just becomes pi over 4. So what that shows us is every time you have 45 degrees, it's equivalent to pi over 4 radians. So we're going to go back and look at this circle where we have every 45 degrees. I'll put them in red here. That's 1 pi over 4. This is 2 pi over 4. This is 3 pi over 4. 4 pi over 4, 5 pi over 4, 6 pi over 4, 7 pi over 4, and 8 pi over 4. So at 45 degrees, we had 1 pi over 4. Sorry, that got messy. So that was at 45 degrees. Then we're at 2 pi over 4, which reduced, and we already have that one. Then the next one we're going to be at 3 pi over 4. Then we're at 4 pi over 4, but then the next one is 5 pi over 4, and then 6 pi over 4, and the last one is 7 pi over 4. And that should give you a visual of everything that's going on as far as the unit circle. So let's go back to our unit circle, and we'll fill all these in. So let's start by going every 30 degrees. Every 30 degrees is a pi over 6. So let's fill out pi over 6. So if this was pi over 6, the one up here is going to be 2 pi over 6, which reduces to pi over 3. Then we have 3 pi over 6. Then we're at 4 pi over 6, which is 2 pi over 3. Let's jump to 150 degrees. So to get from 30 degrees to 150 degrees, it's just multiplying by 5. So it's 5 of those pi over 6s. If you remember pi over 6, you're going to do pretty well. 30 degrees is pi over 6. Let's look at 210. So to get from 30 to 210, it's multiplying by 7. So we're just going to have 7 pi over 6. This would be 8 pi over 6, which reduces to 4 pi over 3. If we go to 300, to get from 30 to 300, it's multiplying by 10. So it's going to be 10 pi over 6s, which reduces to 5 pi over 3. And for 330 degrees, should have a degree symbol there, it should be 11 pi over 6. So we've accounted for all of the pi over 6s, the pi over 3s, and lastly we have the 45 degree increments. Remember, every 45 degree increment is pi over 4. So if we have 45 degrees is pi over 4, we have 90 degrees is 2 pi over 4, which reduces, and then the next one is going to be 3 pi over 4. And then we have 4 pi over 4, which we already have. So this one's going to be 5 pi over 4. Then 6 pi over 4, and the last one is 7 pi over 4. And that is how you fill out the degrees and radians on the unit circle. Start getting this one memorized. It'll help you tremendously as we go on through this unit.